Hello, Sustainable Life Podcast audience. So great to be back after many, many moons. Today on the show, we have Vibhati Bhatia from South Asians for Sustainability. Welcome to the show, Vibs.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
You're such an amazing human being. I think a lot of people adore you for many, many reasons, and I'm excited to have our audience get to know you. So, first question
Oh,
right off the bat is, can you tell us about yourself? Who is
yeah, for sure. I'm gushing as you're saying that, but yeah, I would try and summarize. So, hi everyone, I'm Vibhati, also known as Vibs. I am a sustainability consultant, managing consultant in social sustainability. I founded South Asians for Sustainability back in 2020, and I'm also a fusion musician. So spin lots of plates, singing and performing alongside kind of my campaigning work.
that is so beautiful. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about you, who you are as a person? I mean, you're talking
Yeah.
about these things like as if it's no big deal. I spin a lot of plates. I'm a musician. I have this amazing organization that does a lot of great things in the world. And then also I'm a consultant. No big deal. So if you could break that down for us, that'd be great.
Um, I guess that goes to a lot of like one important value. So I guess I owe that to that, but thank you. So I actually from a young age grew up in a very spiritual community. I've been a part and a member of the Nirgari mission since well, my whole life, and through that is where music came. So my from a very young age learned the harmonium and used to sing bhajans, geets, shabads. So my spiritual foundations and bond to nature, to creation came through music. I feel from a very young age, and then alongside that, a lot of volunteering and seva throughout, the years with my family and my wider community, of which a lot was conservation work as well. And I guess through my education, had always a love for psychology and understanding human beings. So at university, I actually studied social sciences and psychology, but I had an incredible lecturer in one module that I did in one semester, and it was on global challenges. And I had like a very cliche penny drop moment in that time where I had this massive urge in me, and I realized like climate change is such a huge issue that is facing our generation. I never thought I could work in this space. I never had I guess any thinking as a career I could pursue this. But it just in that moment I knew I was like, okay, I need to pivot and I need to learn how I can now give back and do my best in helping and having an impact in this space. So for the first part of my career, I worked and volunteered with a lot of NGOs. I was in Indonesia for a while, and then came to the UK and went into kind of the retail industry in electronics and worked in that sustainability space. So when it came to e-waste and electricals, a lot of the kind of corporate social responsibility and community development work within that company. I worked there for a couple of years and had a real development and understanding of what sustainability within business means. And alongside that entire time, obviously music continued. It was a hobby, but it was also a huge enriching part and a really fulfilling part of my life. And I've had the opportunity to work with and collaborate with so many incredible artists, and still do to date as part of the orchestral Qawwali team. But that was simultaneously happening throughout, I guess, my education and my first job in corporate space. And during that time, I guess COVID happened as well, had a lot more reflection time. And when I was seeking mentorship about where I wanted my career to go and how I can balance both worlds at that time in my mind, both music and creative arts, as well as my work in sustainability. I searched for a space for South Asian people, or South Asian professionals working in either climate change, sustainability, any kind of social purpose field, just to see if there was guidance that they could give me about how I can do both. And when I searched for any kind of space online, any forums, any groups on Facebook, nothing existed for South Asian people. It was mainly diversity and sustainability, more broadly speaking, or it was specific activists who were doing incredible work and had huge recognition, rightly so, for their work. But no one was tying it all together. No one was showing the voices of South Asian people and what the incredible work they were achieving and impact they were having. So instead of finding mentorship, I kind of saw a gap. And I was like, okay, if no one else is doing this, someone has to, because there will be other people in my position who want to find out more from people who are like-minded and have the same cultural background. And that's how South Asians for Sustainability was born. It was a COVID baby project, and I networked online with people on LinkedIn and Facebook groups and found some incredible people who've been around for years doing incredible work, but they'd never been spotlighted from a heritage perspective. Had huge success in their career, but no one talking about, okay, we are South Asian, but we are also doing this, 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 this. And part of the grassroots online campaign highlights and spotlights those people. We've had so many now. The community is, of professionals is over 200 that we've built, and lots of the community follow as well, like a lot of the content that we share. And through that, mentorship opportunities come about because people find people who look like them and can relate to them in so many different industries and sectors. And so they can see, okay, I'm an engineer, or I'm a scientist, or I'm a business entrepreneur, and this is how I can link in purpose, whether it's social, people related, or environmental. This is how I can progress, and I've got someone I can speak to. And then I guess the second part of it was when I thought about sustainable daily life actions and choices. A lot of the things growing up in UK, I should have probably said, yeah, if you can't tell already, I'm from the UK, I live in London. But
Oh, really?
So there was nothing really, when it came to sustainable solutions, nothing culturally relevant available. Like, we have such huge weddings, food is such a huge part of our culture, music and arts is such a big part of who we are as communities. But no one would say, okay, Diwali's coming up, this is how you can be more sustainable. Or we have this Eid or Ramadan festival, there's so many religious events, or we have a huge wedding coming up, we have to buy all these new outfits. Like, no, like, there are alternative ways, solutions that are less impactful on the environment and actually support South Asian people and garment workers, if we think about the fashion industry, who are better supported taking a different route. And human rights and exploitation is so huge in South Asia, and often it just gets kind of like brushed under the carpet. It's an elephant in the room. But and also, even if that is the case, there's another, I guess, aspect of and community that they don't even know this stuff happens, and so they're unaware, and there's unconscious, like, or not even unconscious, just unaware, uneducated. They don't know these things happen and this exploitation is happening, and the disconnect then lies there. So between us as a diaspora region and then South Asian countries and people on the ground there, it's, for me, the platform is about joining that and bridging it and hearing those voices through the lens of the content and the resources we share, as well as from a career perspective. So very long-winded question, answer to your question. But yeah, that's how the campaign came about. And alongside that, consulting also happened. So I guess that's my
Wow,
day job, my 9 to
you're the
5.
coolest. I'm so excited for this conversation because I have probably at least 10 questions that I've sort of brainstormed in the meantime. Like, oh my gosh, I need to ask Bibs her opinion on this. But I want to start with your music because I think that's just so beautiful and so unique, is that spiritual connection that you have.
Mhm.
And for the listeners who are unaware of the significance of singing bhajans and the harmonium, my guess is your background is Sikhism. your
Not,
religion?
I guess heritage is Punjabi,
Oh,
but I at the organization Satnam Mission that I'm a part of, we have a Guruji and a spiritual guide, and it's very humanitarian based. So we
beautiful.
celebrate a lot of the scripture from all religions, and try and find the unity and the similarities of what they're all teaching, essentially. But yeah, Punjabi heritage.
Amazing. Because when I was young, I was reading about Guru Nanak Ji, who's created Sikhism, and how one of his best friends was Hindu and the other best friend was Muslim. And that's basically the creation of the hymns that exist in the
Mhm,
Sikhi culture. And so he got the teachings from one and then the Sufi inspiration from the other and created
mhm,
these hymns to teach, the wider public the teachings in a way that we understand, which is through art, through music.
mhm.
So that's
Yeah.
really, really beautiful that that's your foundation. That just makes me like go gaga over you. You're so cool. Um, and then while we're talking, I started to think about your mention of overconsumption in our
Mhm,
communities. So not just Diwali, but weddings. And I think we're in a really unique position in which we both have similar values, but we also exist in a community where I think there's a lot of ignorance is bliss that sort of goes on in and around it. So it's not just the overconsumption of, outfits when you're at weddings, but something as simple as buying milk at Costco. Like, pardon me for, mentioning names. And being okay with factory farming because you're in the Western world, you're no longer living in
mhm,
India where the milkman comes to your door. What's your
mhm.
opinion on the overconsumption that exists in our culture and or in our community in the Western world?
I think like personally, like I'm with you. But I think across coming from a psychology background as well has really helped me to understand why some of the reasons are for our community, I guess, over consuming or feeling the need to live that way. And when we think of diaspora communities and migration patterns and the instability from a psychological perspective that was brought across by our ancestors and our grandparents and then now parents. Um, I think there's a lot of intergenerational things to I guess uncover here and talk about and break down because a lot when we think of us as South Asians living where we do live, and if we look at parents' habits and although some of them are very sustainable inherently because that's inherent to being South Asian, and those ancestral kind of traditions, equally there's a lot of sentimental hoarding that we see. There's a lot of need for I guess bulk buying because of the if we break it down from a really like human psychological level, it's I guess the fear of instability that they perhaps faced and that's been passed down. So I know I'm going very kind of
Oh, that's very interesting.
academic here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's and that's how I try and understand why people have the consumption behavior patterns that they do and why they choose to go for bulk buying over consumption because it is essentially like stability, that they feel having more things, being able to see those things and in a house that they've built from nothing, that sense of pride. And there's also a narrative as well of like the struggle that they went through, to be able to provide a lifestyle that is more comfortable, as human beings. And so I have conversations with community members here, in the UK, where they're like, well, our grandparents worked so hard to be able to provide this life for us, to be able to consume in this way. Why shouldn't we? Like we've not had that stability for years and years before. And it's a perspective that I never truly understood or like saw as a different perspective before actually having these conversations. So it opened up to my eyes to a different way as well of thinking and why I guess that exists in our communities particularly. And often, we touched on weddings already, like it can be seen as like a way to show status as well. or to show that that progression has been had and that they have a comfortable life. But when you break it down to a really human level, it is just primal, I guess, based on the instability that they faced years and years ago. It doesn't justify it from when we think of it from an impact perspective, and it not being great for the environment or like the communities that are not supported in that, often South Asian communities, ironically. But I've learned to understand it from a different lens, even if my personal standpoint is, yeah, it's like those values don't align with me personally. I try and learn where they're coming from, and then trying to find a balanced approach and realistically on a practical level where they can come and where they can make those changes.
Awesome. I mean, when you were talking about that, it made me think about Christmas at my house. I am not materialistic at all. I would rather, give experiences and have us all go skiing together and
Mhm.
call that a gift. Whereas my
Yeah.
siblings would open up presents for me and be like, I can't, like, you just donated money so that a kid in another country could have their eyesight back. I can't do anything with this. And they didn't feel good
Mm.
about it. So that was my experience growing up, and I sort of found a way to then give experiences as a result and hope that they would enjoy those. Um, but how, in your opinion, you're talking about our grandparents and how, our generation and maybe even our parents' generation feel like they need to live the life that our grandparents sort of our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents, they just basically justifying their sacrifices and not
Mm.
justifying their sacrifices. What am I trying to say? Like honoring their sacrifices. So we're living a life so that, we're saying thank you to them for that. But in many ways, we also have to think about our grandchildren too, right?
Of
What
course.
kind of a
Yeah.
life are we leaving behind for them or setting up for them? So what kind of advice do you have for people like you and I, um, who have these beliefs, know what's ahead, but also want to be able to share that with our loved ones so that they too
Mm.
see, how urgent this situation is? What can you share with us?
Honestly, I can talk from personal experience of like different family members and friends that I speak to. And like many years ago, I used to feel it was really jarring, and I used to feel really triggered when I saw that they didn't get it, like, and they didn't see the urgency, and they didn't seem to care enough to make changes. And I guess as I've evolved and like talking to them in conversations, honestly, everyone in our community, or at least in my family and friendship circles, they will care about something. There will be something that does impact them emotively, and it will hit and strike a different chord that might not be directly linked to veganism. It might not be directly linked to sustainable fashion. It might be social development issues or education issues, or treat it, they might not connect to nature as much as they might connect to people, or vice versa. They may really care about animals, and they may really care about their food sources, and they might not really know much about anything to do in the fashion industry. These are just some day-to-day examples, I guess, or cleaning products, or what
Yeah.
we consume on a day-to-day. So in my experience, it's always been about, now when I have a conversation, it's okay, I understand that this person, they care a lot about this sustainability topic and issue. So if I am gifting, or if I know that we were talking about gifting, or if I want to have a conversation with them, like I know that that's that one thing, I know that they care about that. And if that's something that they can do really, really well, at least that's one thing, right? Like in their day-to-day life, that they can start there. Like they can start there, and maybe and hopefully with more education and resources available, they'll start to see how it's all interlinked, and how it all really does make a difference for future generations. I know a lot of parents, South Asian parents particularly, who hear from their own kids learning at school, coming back with anxieties about climate crisis and what it means for them. And that really stirs up in parents, because then they realize themselves when they're hearing it from their kids, and not like activists like myself or you, or then it strikes a different chord. So I think it's a time and place, as well, like when in their journeys they're going to realize at different points. But I do fundamentally believe everyone has something that they care deeply about. And in sustainability, when we think of it, climate crisis is a part of that, but there's so many other things that are interlinked, and it works as a system. So and we're all needed, right? If there's a fashion activist, if there's a food activist, and a vegan, like we're all of in our individual actions, we're all needed for the greater whole and the greater impact.
That's a really, really good point. Thank you for that share. Um, let's talk about holidays, because we talked about holidays. So just for some context, I was doing an Instagram live with Vibs for South Asians for Sustainability, and we talked about holidays. And Diwali is right around the corner. I'm going to try my best to get this podcast released by Diwali. So do you want to talk about holidays, just any tips and tricks that you've kind of come across being a South
Yeah.
Asian, not just Diwali, but anything?
For sure. Well, first of all, there are some incredible organizations that exist that are faith-based. So I know Sustainability Muslim is one, Hindu Climate Action in the UK, EcoSick, and they always share resources that are linked to specific festivities. I've just named three there, but there are others. In the UK, there's also Faith for the Climate, and they are a grassroots organization that bring together people from all religions, and from a climate activism perspective. So any solutions and resources are readily available online for anyone who wants to go and look into that more deeply. Just look for Faith for the Climate on their website. But me, like I guess with Diwali coming up, I again used to be very, very triggered by firecrackers and fireworks, and just hearing it would actually make Diwali really depressing for me, because I just lock myself in my room, have my headphones in, because I just didn't want to hear it. Like I genuinely felt such anger and frustration, especially with my neighbors who were just going for it. This was a few years ago. And I've learned to, I guess, find a way to cope through it. But I will actively encourage my family as well. Like, if you want to partake in fireworks, or like see them, and the kids love it. So they never, they want to do something, and it can be core memories for children too. Go to parks or like larger spaces where a lot of people are watching the same fireworks show, so it's less emissions overall. And that's just, I mean, talking about Diwali and maybe New Year's
Do
celebrations as
you
well.
want to talk about
We
fireworks
talked,
though? That would be an interesting thing, just for people
yeah,
who aren't aware. I mean, there's obviously the toxic elements that go into the environment from them. There's the
yeah,
manufacturing practices that are
sure.
very, very, I mean, it differs depending on what country you're from, but let's call a thing a thing. I mean, there's definitely human rights atrocities that are happening in those factories.
Yeah,
And then, so, and disposing of the fireworks after the fact too, right? Environmental impact.
yeah.
Anything else that you think?
Impact on furry friends.
Yes.
They are traumatized by the sound. The microplastics that I guess are there. We've talked about toxicity and the chemicals, pollution. I mean, when you think of it from a grand scale, fireworks are more limited in their impact, but that doesn't mean that they're fine, and it's okay to continue. On a personal level, if we aggregate the amount of emissions associated to firecrackers, they're huge. And I guess when we think of South Asia, particularly, every time I've been to India a couple of times during Diwali season in the last 2, 3 years, and the smog in northern regions in Delhi and Punjab, uh, I mean, it's unbearable. All my family right now are already sick because of the smog that is in North India. And a lot of that is to do with fireworks, despite the bans being in place in many regions. So, like, that is part of the pollution issue there, but there's a lot more. But it all comes together, and I guess it's
Well,
not
and
good
also
for our lungs.
diverse
It's not good for our
abilities
health.
too. That's
Yeah.
another thing I didn't think about is people with autism, etc. you
Yeah,
want to respect those in your community too, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it can be really triggering.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Next holiday. What
I
else
mean,
you
we
got to
didn't,
share? Oh my gosh, we just talked about fireworks so far. There's so much more.
there's so
That,
much more. The as we mentioned earlier, you can get more sustainable options, clay, using going back to roots, desi ghee, or mustard oil and a bit of cotton that goes so far, and it's so pretty and beautiful to light up your homes. Um, when we think of the different occasions or festivities where we have a lot of food, food is such a big one. Especially for us South Asians, we love our food and flavors, and rightly
yes.
so. I mean, it's part of who we are, right? But there are always alternative options. I know for Christmas, for the last 2, 3 years now, with my in-laws, we've always had a nut roast, which is delish. It's amazing. Instead of having traditional, I guess, meat or what is usually cooked on in Christmas meals in the UK at least. So that's a big one for us. And you can still add all those Indian spices and make it amazing. Like it just is a more sustainable option. What else about holidays? There's so much. My mind has just gone
Outfits, outfits,
totally.
outfits. You were talking about
Yes.
outfits in our live as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. So weddings, occasions, Diwali, any bright colored festivals, Holi. Often, there's such a huge pressure, I think, in our community, or at least among friendship circles or whatever. Like you want new outfits, you want to look good, which is also like important for our own self-confidence and enjoying ourselves. But there are alternative options. I got married last year, and being Punjabi, like having a trousseau was such a massive deal to my nanny and my mom. And I didn't get it. I was like, I already have so many amazing outfits. Why is it just because I'm getting married, I need like a load of new ones? So we managed to come up with a compromise. And I used my nanny, my daddy, my great grandmother, my mom, their old saris and outfits. And I had them stitched into like Indo-Western suits, or I had like something made out of it and I had them passed down, which is of so much more sentimental value to me. To have them upcycled, to see them when I'm wearing it, and then also have photographs of them wearing it as a traditional sari, and then me wearing it as something totally new, and being a showcase of being like British but also Indian, and that fusion is so cool for me. And also there, I know in North America, but particularly in the UK, I can speak to, there are pre-loved sites, pre-loved South Asian clothing sites and rentals. So in the UK, Circular throughout in the last 2 years, and they're offering the service and platform to rent South Asian clothing, but also to sell. So you may have worn an outfit once or twice, and it's just lying in your cupboard. I know so many of us have that,
Too many of us
but you
have
might
that.
not want to wear it again. It might be outside, like mixing, matching. That's another thing. So there's so many options when it comes to clothes.
I love that. Okay, awesome. Well, I think the best way to end off this podcast is by letting people know how to contact you and how to get more involved with South Asians
Yeah.
for Sustainability. There are a lot of us out there, regardless of what industry we work in, who I think would be interested in your content. So if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find us on South Asians for Sustainability on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We also have our website, southasiansforsustainability.com. And if there's any way that we can help, or if there's any further content or resources that you'd like, please do reach out in our DMs, or via email. We also have a Google form through our link, on Linktree, which you can find on our pages. If you are doing some work and you'd like to chat with us, and if you think, we can spotlight what you're doing, there is a form that you can fill in, and I'd love to connect and hear from you, so we can platform your story and more about your career. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure to chat.
Of course. Thank you for existing.
Thank you.